Hi everybody and welcome to my channel. In this episode of Prison News, I'm going to be talking about headlines that are in the news today, all about prison. But if you are new to my channel, please remember to go and like and subscribe. And this is just another topic that I've been covering where I'm talking about what's happening in the news today and got quite a good bit of feedback from it last week. So the first story I'm going to talk about is sadistic prison officer who took pleasure in abuse of young boys has been jailed. So a sadistic prison officer who abused boys at a youth detention centre has been jailed for 3 years. Patrick Devaney assaulted 22 teenagers while he was working in the gym at Eastwood Park Young Offenders Institute in South Gloucestershire between 1970 and 1983. He would kick and hit young boys, even using weapons including a cricket bat and a 5-foot paddle. He racially abused black teenagers and set up a game so violent it was called Murder Ball. As he was sentenced at Bristol Crown Court on Friday the 15th of September, the 81-year-old was described as a cruel man who derived sadistic pleasure from routinely abusing young boys. Devaney of County Down in Northern Ireland has been jailed for 3.5 years after a jury convicted him of misconduct in a public office earlier this year. Paul Brealey, Alan Andrews and Luann Andrews were victims of Devaney after being sent to Eastwood Park as teenagers. They met there for the first time only to talk to ITV News. Having been at Eastwood Park at different times, despite this, their experiences have chilling similarities. Paul Brealey from Devon was 14 when he went to the unit in May 1969. He says the events that transpired left him traumatised. As soon as he walked in the door, you knew you'd entered the gates of something because it was a huge shock to the system. You were screamed at, shouted at, pushed, prodded. We were made to strip naked at 14 years old. He added he would physically attack you with medicine balls, drop medicine balls on you when you were doing sit-ups. He had a bat he used to hit you with. Paul suffered years of alcoholism, which he blames on his time at Eastwood Park, but he has since turned his life around and set up several flourishing businesses. So this seems to be a common theme of these detention centres, because there's a one up here in the northeast, which is Medhamsley Detention Centre, and it's just came out now. A lot of the officers that used to work there have all been sentenced for what they've done in them detention centres, but what happened up in Medhamsley was a lot more brutal than what this is. Obviously, I'll talk a little bit more about what it says here, but everything that these detention centres all have in common, that there was a lot of abuse happening. So all these men that went to work in these institutes that were supposed to be there to help these young lads have actually turned out to be bad, prolific abusers. And they must have gotten into that job specifically just so they could act out their sick fantasies and abuse these young lads. But a lot of the time, because I've met a lot of people like this that were in care in detention centres, and the majority of them all seem to have been abused whilst they were young. They're all got after a bad start in life, getting put in care, took away from the parents. The parents couldn't look after them. So you would think they get put into care to get what it says care, but they get the absolute opposite. And that's why a lot of lads and lasses end up in prison, because of the abuse that they suffered. So Alan Andrews from Wales was 14-year-old when he went to the detention centre in 1977. He said the abuse made him shut down physically. Alan said he used to cut electric flex. There was a thick electric flex that was mentioned in the trial, and he used to get you to hold monkey bars and he would smack you on the backside with that. It just traumatised me, he added. I was a child. A switch went off inside of me. There was a couple of events in the detention centre which lasted for another 16 years where a switch went and said no one is seeing Alan again. Despite this, Alan told ITV News, I don't have any angry thoughts, vicious thoughts, vengeance thoughts. I just felt sorry for the other boys. My life is based on I forgive the guy. That doesn't forgive him, but it empties out my head. In brackets it says a complete psychopath. So Luann Llewellyn from Bournemouth spent 6 weeks at the South Gloucestershire Institute in 1976 and states he is still haunted by the memory. Devaney was a complete psychopath, a sadist, and got pleasure in humiliating young kids. I've only got flashbacks of when he punched me, but I've seen terrible things. The attacks by Devaney happened during the time of the government's policy of a short, sharp shock to discourage reoffending. The trial heard Devaney, who denied the charges, took this policy to its most extreme form. During mitigation, Devaney's barrister said he had performed lots of charity work in recent years and would play music at old people's homes. He argued Devaney presented no risk of reoffending. Well, at 81-year-old, he probably won't be at risk of reoffending because he won't be at risk of hitting young boys again at that age. But again, it's too little too late because they've lived their life. They've getting on with it, and all these lads that were in these care have went on to suffer for the rest of their lives. So during the sentencing, Judge Edward Burgess described Devaney as a cruel man who derived sadistic pleasure from routinely abusing the boys he was responsible for. Speaking directly to Devaney, he said, "You were the worst kind of brute. You regularly assaulted boys by beating them and kicking them and using weapons. The most fearsome was a paddle measuring 5 feet and a cricket bat called a sixer." Judge Edward Burgess described the victim's personal statements about Devaney's abuse as upsetting, chilling and moving. He added, "I am conscious of these grown men that as boys they suffered terrible anguish in their stays at Eastwood Park. It is clear to me, and seeing you in court, you do not believe that you did anything wrong." So again, like I've mentioned, it's too little too late. I know a lot of people might say, well, he was just trying to give them that short, sharp shock, but obviously the way that he was acting it out was far too aggressive and far too much, and it's had a devastating effect on these lads for the rest of their lives. Speaking about conviction earlier this year, Avon and Somerset Police Detective Inspector Alan Smith, the senior investigating officer in the case, said Devaney exploited his position to assault people he was supposed to keep safe. He said he worked for the prison service at a time when there was a government policy of giving young offenders a short, sharp shock by way of punishment.
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
Oh, sorry about that, people. Alexa went on for some reason. He admitted to giving the boys a clip around the ears and raps on the knuckles, but vehemently denied abusing them in the way he did. Eastwood Park closed as a detention centre and is now a woman's prison. So they said it was a short, sharp shock, but at 14-year-old, even going into prison or a detention centre at that age is going to be a big enough shock without a big man like that beating you up with weapons. Something that someone out on the outside, if they'd done that to a kid, would be scandalised and it would be all over the place and you would get a massive sentence for doing something like that. But because he's in authority, he thinks he can get away with it, and he's in there because he's probably enjoyed inflicting pain on these lads, and who knows what else has went on. But hopefully they can all move on with their lives and it hasn't turned them into violent men, because that's what sometimes happens. We're moving on to the next story. We're going to be talking about a woman's prison here, which is up in the northeast, HMP Low Newton, which is right next door to Frankland. And this is where Lucy Letby will be serving out her sentence. Rose West is in there. And there's quite, by all the high profile women, the ones serving life without parole. Joanna Dennehy, she's in there. But it says, the headline is HMP Low Newton slammed by ombudsman for CCTV black spots. The northeast prison has been slammed by an ombudsman following safety concerns about CCTV black spots in the prison. The HMP Low Newton, located in Durham, was told by the independent monitoring boards that it lacked adequate CCTV coverage and areas where visibility is low could result in violence. Well, in most prisons there is CCTV black spots because they can't have it on every single angle of the prison. More so in the showers where they're not allowed to put CCTV. And this is where a lot of beatings take place in prison and prison justice, so you might call it. This is where if somebody's after another prisoner, then they will wait until they go in the showers, follow them in and do what they have to do in the showers out the way of the cameras. So other concerns about the prison noted that there had been a rise in the number of illicit items found on the premises, staff shortages and high levels of ill mental health in the prison population, which isn't a surprise because it's like that in every single prison. IMBs monitor the treatment received by those detained in custody to confirm it is fair, just and humane by observing the compliance with relevant rules and standards of decency. HMP Low Newton is a closed women's prison for both adults and young offenders in Brasside, County Durham. The prison, which is operated by His Majesty's Prison Service, is next to HMP Franklin. Some of the prison's most notorious former residents include, who I've just mentioned, Rose West, Peterborough Ditch murderer Joanna Dennehy, and it has been reported that Lucy Leppi could be placed in Low Newton. Right, so there remain obvious further needs, including enhanced CCTV. This will all be coming to light because they know the likes of Lucy Leppi is going there, and if she's attacked in there, it'll be mainstream news. I'll be reading it out on prison news, and the prison is going to get backlash for it because she's so high profile. They'll be saying she should have been protected at all times, or there should be evidence of what went on. So this will be the reason why they're clamping down, and there's been an independent monitoring board to see what's happening, because they don't want to look like muppets when Lucy Leppi gets prison justice served out on her, which will happen at some point. It might not be in the next year or two, but when things relax, Lucy Leppi will be in mainstream news for being attacked. The prison is a reasonably safe environment for prisoners and staff. Staff are vigilant but not oppressive. The number of violent incidents has decreased despite a greater degree of prisoner freedom. Use of force is kept at low levels, but the board will monitor this more. A spokesman for the Ministry of Justice said all our prisons have the necessary security measures and procedures in place to manage offenders and keep the public safe. Well, the majority of them will keep the public safe because the majority of them you cannot escape from unless it's somewhere like Wandsworth and they haven't had a control of it. But I don't think it's more about keeping the public safe. It's about keeping other prisoners safe, because prisoner on prisoner attack is happening on a daily basis throughout the prison system. But moving on from that one, people, I'm now going to talk about Raphael Rowe, because it's got on inside the world's toughest prison host attacked as inmate killed in vicious brawl. Now, the majority of you probably would have seen the documentaries that Raphael has made, and Raphael actually spent 12 years in prison over here in England for something. I think it was a murder for a murder he didn't commit, but after 12 years, it was proven that it wasn't him. There was DNA evidence to show who the perpetrator was, and Raphael got out, and he went on to create a better life for himself, and he's doing these documentaries. And if you haven't seen them, go and give them a look, because I think I've watched just about every one of them, and they're very interesting, very dangerous, but a lot different to these UK prisons. So Inside the World's Toughest Prisons is back on Netflix, and host Raphael Rowe has revealed what it's like coming face to face with the world's most dangerous prisoners. Inside the World's Toughest Prisons has returned to Netflix. In the newest series, the 55-year-old broadcast journalist has stepped inside 4 prisons across the globe: Bali in Indonesia, Czech Republic, Finland and the Solomon Islands. After spending 12 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit, Raphael has a unique and insightful perspective that he implements in his time within these institutes. Stepping inside those walls means the presenter's life is always at risk, and in an exclusive chat with Daily Star, he spoke about times when his crew have faced terrifying threats. Raphael said there have been occasions where we have been attacked both on and off camera. We've been in Costa Rica when a prisoner was killed in the block that we were in and we had to be moved. But like I mentioned, if you have seen these videos, or these documentaries rather, some of these prisons that he goes into, the majority of them are very third world prisons, and very dangerous, and it would have to take a lot of balls to step inside that prison, because he actually goes into the prison and stays in there for a number of days at a time. Luckily, that wasn't targeted at me or my crew, but it was close proximity. If that was a scene where there was a conflict between groups, we could have been caught up in that. He continued, there have been on occasions where there has been some animosity between prisoners and prison staff because of our presence, or because of something that's been boiling and we've happened to be there when it's gone on. The threats don't end there, with Raphael adding, I've been threatened directly by prisoners, and sometimes it's really difficult to tell whether they're doing it because the cameras are there or they're doing it because it's what they do. But again, some of these prisoners that he lives with are notorious gangsters, killers, hitmen, so it is a very dangerous position where he's putting himself in, being inside these prisons. In the third of the Netflix series, Raphael walked into Kilmacosk prison near the city of Tampere, which houses extremely violent prisoners, including murderers. In Finland, which is one of the highest murder rates in Europe, well, there's a thing I didn't know. Finland is one of the highest murder rates in Europe. Criminals can choose to participate in rehabilitation, and Raphael wanted to discover whether their approach works for repeat offenders. But he walked out of the prison. Oh, there's 2 seconds. I've skipped that a little bit. Go back. Sharing a further insight into the men he comes face to face with, Raphael revealed a man he spent time with in the Finland prison has now been killed. I can share that one of the guys who I spent time with has been released from prison. The TV star said he was a violent prisoner, but he came across in the show as somebody who had compassion. But he walked out of prison and got shot dead. It just shows you that you sometimes underestimate how dangerous and violent these places are. But again, like I've mentioned it, I'll take my hat off to Raphael. I've actually, if he is watching this, I've actually dropped him a message to try and get him on my podcast to do an interview with him to talk about his time in the prison over in the UK and talk about his different experiences with the different prisons around the world. But I'll leave that one there for now, people. Remember, if you are enjoying the content, remember to like, comment and subscribe to get that algorithm up, because when I've checked the other day, 70% of my viewers are still not subscribed to my channel. And those that are subscribed, I would just want to say a massive thanks, because I'm well over 53,000 subscribers now. So imagine if the rest of my viewers that are watching this subscribe to my channel, it'll be well over the 100,000 mark, which is my next aim. So hopefully in the next year, I'll hit that 100,000 mark. But again, thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.